I'm Lauren with Pack Hacker, and in this video we're taking a detailed look at the Tropicfeel Monsoon Sneakers, which I've been testing for the last year. Let's dive in. These shoes are fairly multi-use, so you can use them as water shoes, but you can use them as everyday shoes as well. I've actually used them as both, so we're going to talk about how they function with each of those settings. For everyday use, I actually wear these very often. Like I said, I've been testing them for the last year, but I would say throughout the summer months, especially, I wear them like multiple times a week. I do think that this colorway, it's pretty nice. This is what the shoe looks like now after a year of use, and then this is a shoe that has only been worn a couple times. So you can see, I mean, obviously the one that I've been using for a year is more beat up, but in terms of like discoloration, there's really not that much of a difference between the two, which is pretty impressive, especially for a shoe that's a lighter color like this, because I prefer lighter color shoes, but obviously they get dirtier faster. This material itself, you can see a full breakdown on their site of how the materials are split, but this is like their air mesh tech, which is like this mesh material. Basically around this shoe we have a blend of like polyesters, EVA, and rubber, and a lot of them are recycled. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit closer so you can get a good look at the materials here. I did recently wash these. You can see that there's some new, this actually was gone after I washed them, so that's new within like the last couple of days, I think, which we'll go over washing in a second. But with these here, the reason why they function both as everyday shoes and as water shoes is because of this mesh material. So you can kind of see my finger through it, but it's not like the shoe itself is see-through, but it is just really light and airy, and that means that water drains out of it really well. Like those drainage holes, there's also their like drain sole. This is almost, it kind of looks like jelly almost. And I mean, I do apologize because this is not the prettiest thing to look at shoes that I've been wearing for a year. But it functions really well. Like I did wear these into a river, and you know, I'd lift my foot out of the water and the water would just like pour out of the shoe. So that functionality does work really well for this. They aren't like, there's not crazy tread or anything. So if you're gonna be doing like really intense hiking, I would say stay away from these. But I was going through like walks through the woods, which is when I ended up in the water, and it worked perfectly fine. It also did a really good job at keeping its grip when I was walking around like really slippery rocks. A friend actually fell in and I did not. So, and she was barefoot. So with these here, they do a really good job, like I mentioned, with the draining water. The disadvantage of that is that you can, like air also goes through these holes essentially. So I don't wear these shoes once the temperature starts to really drop because I can, like when I'm walking, I feel an active breeze going through my shoe, which is nice when it's hot weather because then that means that your feet are airing out. The disadvantage is when it's cold weather, your feet get cold. So no insulation on this thing, but for summer weather and for multi-use shoe, I think that that's kind of a perk more than anything. It also helps with like the odorlessness. This is, they say it's treated with an antibacteria to stop odors, but with this, I think washing the material to refresh it and things like that do a really good job at kind of cutting back on odors anyway. So that and the fact that, you know, your feet are kind of airing out while they're inside of it. They are designed as well to be worn without socks. They have this like sprint lace system and they're just like slip on, easy to slip on shoes. I do have to find that I kind of have to like shove my foot in there and you can use this like tab back here to kind of pull the shoe. I never find this helping me much, honestly. What I end up doing is I shove my foot in here, it pulls this down a little bit, and then I just kind of move my foot around and it like readjusts itself. So it's not that big of a deal. And then with the laces too, I never have to adjust them. Couple of notes on those. You can see this little, they kind of have like these little rubber end caps. So what you can do is you can pull the shoe tighter when it's on and like pull that down, and then the shoe won't, like the lace won't go any further than that. The disadvantage is that they are kind of hard to move. I also didn't feel like I needed to tighten them any more than they currently are at the very end. But this one has been making me crazy. I don't have enough grip on, there's not enough space on this side to like push it that way, but there's not enough on this side, structure on this side to like push it down a little bit more. So it's just kind of hanging out there. I haven't lost it or anything. However, I have lost it on this side here. So you can see that little, I don't even know when this happened. Honestly, one time I just looked down and I was like, oh, it's gone. But I think that speaks to the fact that I didn't have to worry about the shoe. Like at no point has the lace ever pulled all the way through. I mean, that's the furthest it's gone, and because I like actively did it. Because I'm not putting these shoes on actively every time, I'm just shoving my foot in, like I don't feel like the laces actually move around enough for me to have an issue with it. So that's something to keep in mind, which is nice. And then the last thing here, we've got the reason why so these are, like I said, can be worn without socks. I don't do that. Not because it's not comfortable, it definitely is, like from a basic standpoint, but there's this spot specifically on this side, so it might just be the pair that I have, but the actual stitching on the inside here, bring it up a little closer, it's very rough. And that ends up actually rubbing against my foot, and I've gotten blisters a couple times from these. So I've just kind of learned to wear socks with them, which for me is not that big of a deal, honestly, because the main reason why I wouldn't want to wear socks with these is when I go into the water. And in that case, I'm taking my socks off anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. And after I got out of the water, I just kind of wore the shoes until they dried, and it worked out perfectly fine. It did take a couple of hours though, so depending on the time you go into the water, I would say probably bank on your shoes being pretty damp for the rest of the day, unless it's like a really hot sunny day, they might dry a little quicker. Really quickly as well about the care instructions for these. So they say to wash them by hand, which I definitely agree with. You can run them on a cycle. They have the specifics on their site if you want to take a look. But like I said, you can see that there are some blemishes around here that I've just kind of picked up over time in the last time since I washed them. But I want to see, you can kind of see it. There's almost like a water stain right here. And that's something that happened to me fairly often. Like if I even just like walk through morning dew and it got really, really wet, it would create like a little bit of a watermark, a water stain there. And those is the type of thing where in another shoe, it would kind of ruin the shoe. But in this case, truly all I had to do was get this wet. And I think I honestly, last time I washed these, I didn't even use soap or anything. I just got them wet, and that water stain kind of washed out. But I have done it when I washed it with like a little bit of soap and water and just like a light brush or something like that. And it came off really nice and easy. So they are really easy to clean, which is nice if you like that lighter colorway. These have kind of become my go-to shoe for traveling because they are so versatile, especially if I don't know like what kind of stuff I'm gonna get up to. But I just like the slip-on design so much. And it makes it actually really also easy to like going through airport security. But with the packability itself, I also like that they pack down super flat. So these here, like this back is going to be a little bit more structured naturally. Well, one, because of how they actually designed it, but also because like with that slip-on design, you need some structure in the back to actually shove your foot in, or else it would just crush this down every time. But even with that, like I'm able to get these shoes pretty flat and get them into a bag, especially if I have them in like a pouch or something within my bag. So it works out really nicely for like going on trips and things like that, especially if I want to bring multiple pairs of shoes. There's a little bit more versatility in there with these guys. If you're finding this video helpful, hit subscribe so we can keep making content to help you travel smarter. But as for sizing of these shoes, I find that they run like very, very, very slightly small. I am usually around an 8. These are an 7.5 women's. So it's kind of up to you, but I do feel like it hasn't really stretched out much over the course of my wearing. So you can see like this, obviously this is not the same size shoe, but you can see like this structure and this kind of like, I don't know, like loopiness on the edge here. It is the same on the shoe that hasn't been worn a ton. So I don't feel like I would have gotten really much more, like some shoes you want to buy a little bit lower size, smaller size so that they can stretch out. I feel like these just straight up ran a little bit smaller. Maybe it is because this material is so thin or something, I'm not entirely sure. But I do think that they are comfortable. The only note is that, you know, with that stitching on the side getting a little bit like blistery when I'm wearing them without socks. Otherwise, I find myself comfortable standing in them and walking them all day as well. So there you have it, the Tropicfeel Monsoon Sneakers. Thanks for keeping it here at Pack Hacker, your guide to smarter travel, and we'll see you in the next one.